right.
Happy Wednesday. Hopefully today we have less technology issues.
Yes,
than
it was a
yesterday.
day.
And you know what, boys and girls, sometimes you all have them at home.
Mhm.
We just had that at school here. Miss Mullen was trying to fix it. I was trying to fix it.
And we didn't know what was up with Nearpod. It kept doing weird things, and we've used it. We know how to use it.
It just wasn't cooperating. And you
So-
know, we try to understand when you all have days like that, we need you all to give us the same grace back that
And just be patient with
Yeah.
us, because, when we're busy trying to help friends at school, like you would want help when you're at school,
and
you got to
I
give
guess
us
we
time.
can have this conversation in the morning message, but I'm gonna say it here too. Like when you comment and you need help, two things: A, be patient and wait for us to respond. Don't three, I need helps, and maybe read up. Like before you comment, if there's 5 or 6 comments before you, we may already know it's a problem and we're already working on it. And if somebody already says then your pod's not working and we go, oh my goodness, we're working on it, then you don't have to tell us. We already know it's not working. Okay. All right. Back to folk tales for today.
All right. So you have finished watching Quill, how Porcupine got his quills. It's kind of a folktale
A little bit of
slash
Pourquoi
Yep, a little
story
bit of both.
because it's explaining something in nature.
Mhm. But we're going to focus this week on retelling. Ooh, and we've done the
5-finger retell a couple of times now.
so we're going to go a little different route. I was trying to make this smaller without. Let me just move it. How about we do that?
And boys and girls, another word for retelling is summarizing.
Summarizing.
You're going to see that word summary there at the top of the screen.
Mhm.
A summary is just the main points of something.
Mhm. So what we want to do now is we've got some details that came from the story, and we're going to sort them. I'm going to have to go out of present mode. So when you do this, I'll try to go out of present mode. Well,
You hit escape, right? There we
there
go.
we go. I'm telling you, technology is not our friend today. When you're doing yours, you need to make sure you're out of present mode as well, because we're going to need to sort these boxes.
Just drag.
We're going to drag them by they are important to the summary or they're not important to the summary.
When I think about whether it's important to the summary or not important to the summary, I think about if it's important to the summary, it's related in particular to the problem,
Or
the solution,
Mhm.
or something that really gets me from the problem to the solution. If it says it's a beautiful day outside, that's probably not going to be important to the summary.
All right. Porcupine ended up with quills, and he hides during the day, ashamed of himself.
That's important
That
because that's kind of how the story ended.
It's the part of
Part
the
of
solution.
solution.
And, we talked in class yesterday about solution doesn't always mean
Happily ever after.
no, it's not. These aren't all fairy tales. So there's not always a happily ever after.
Sometimes the solution is just how it ends
is.
up.
Yep. And so it ends up Porcupine with nothing, with those quills and hiding himself. Porcupine was talking to Jackal.
Not so
necessary.
important. I mean,
No.
they could have been talking about the weather.
Yep. Porcupine said, "Oh, that seems to make sense. We don't really know what he's talking about. Probably
And
not
I know
important."
what Porcupine did that was annoying, and that doesn't really seem to go with that. So I'm going to say no.
Porcupine felt foolish for falling for Jackal's trick.
Maybe.
I think it refers to the trick in there, which is an important event, and him feeling foolish leads to the fact that he hides during the day. So I think we'll put that as important. Let's do this one, get it out of the way. Jackal snickered as Porcupine ran off.
I don't think we would have to have that.
No, we wouldn't have to necessarily have that. Jackal said, "Take your time."
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Porcupine waved goodbye to Jackal.
No.
Grab this one here. Jackal ended up with a beautiful fur coat.
Yes, because that kind of goes up here with what Porcupine ended up
Uh-huh.
with. They both got things in the end.
Jackal wanted to teach Porcupine a lesson.
Absolutely.
Because that's why he did the trick. Porcupine loved to brag about his fur coat.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That is the problem. That's the main problem in the story.
So ultimately, we could write our summary using, not
Those-
necessarily in the order we've got them in, but we could summarize using those important details there.
So, going to that, we are now going to retell the story. So if we're going to retell it, we need to think about, and when we think about those, the 5-finger retell, we had the characters, setting as is important. The problem, important events, solution, and maybe what they
And I
learned.
kind of think, Ms. Mom, in retelling, I kind of think beginning, middle, and end as
Mhm.
well, because in the beginning, usually it's the problem. So a long
So-
time ago, Porcupine had a beautiful coat.
He loved to brag about it.
Yeah, all the time. That's the problem right there. Jackal got tired of it. He was annoyed listening to that bragging, and he decided he was going to teach him a lesson.
Now, we don't have to go through all the details about him telling about the witch doctor that lived across the field and hold your fur coat and all this kind of stuff. You just need to talk about the fact that he wanted to teach him lesson.
And so Jackal tricked Porcupine into giving him the fur coat, while Porcupine went through the thorns to get a more beautiful fur coat. Was there really a more beautiful fur coat in the thorns? Into giving him his fur coat.
Wow, Porcupine went and he had to go through the thorns.
To get, he thought, a better fur coat, because Porcupine was all about how he looked.
Uh-huh.
And he might look good, but if he can look
thought he
better,
would look better, right?
Yeah, okay.
And that's why I put better fur coat in parentheses, or not in quotes, because that's what he thought he was getting, but it wasn't at all what he got.
At the end, what did Porcupine end up with?
Porcupine ended up with a bunch of quills and being ashamed of himself.
And Jackal
had his beautiful fur coat, and supposedly that's why porcupines, according to the Native Americans,
have quills.
Porcupine I can't type and talk. So
Ended up
with quills
and being ashamed of himself. This one, Miss Mom, boys and girls haven't read it yet, but it reminds me of the one about the beaver. Is the beaver's tail?
I think so.
Where they trick, he's always bragging about his tail being so beautiful, and they play the trick.
So what lesson can we say we can learn?
Don't think too highly of yourself. He thought he was like better than everybody else, and he wasn't. And it came back to.
Can you think of a word that might describe porcupine?
Porcupine. He was a bragger.
Absolutely. Bragger. Sometimes we say he's boastful.
He had a big head. He was conceited.
Mm-hmm. A word for jackal.
Clever.
Clever. A trickster.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And this one, it is a trickster tale, and the trick really worked. Sometimes the tricks don't play out
and
they
work. Come back against the person who tricked.
But he was able to
one other thing, because we're going to ask you a question on the story you're going to read. We're going to think about an example of someone today who might need to learn Porcupine's lesson.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you some examples, and you see which one of these you think would work. Okay, so I have, what if there's a little girl whose mom is giving her some advice about how she should do her homework, and the little girl doesn't listen to her mom's advice?
Well, that's about being wise and making good choices, and listening to those that are smarter than you.
Okay. What about a little boy who wants to make 100 on a spelling test, but he never studies?
He needs to learn to work hard. I don't think that's the lesson.
What if we have a little girl who has lots of candy, but she keeps it all to herself, and even like when she meets friends who she likes, she doesn't give any to them?
Well, she's greedy. She needs to learn to share with others.
Okay. What about a little boy who's on the basketball team, and he thinks that he's better than everybody else on the team, and he won't pass the ball, and like the night of the big game, his friend is wide open, but he doesn't pass it, and he takes the shot, and they lose?
He needs to learn not to think too highly of himself, to share the wealth, and don't think that he's better than everybody else. So he would need to learn the same lesson as Porcupine. So today, when you go to yours, you're going to have a story about, let's get to it here. Your story is going to be about Cody and the river. You're going to read the story. You're going to sort some details just like we sorted. And then you're going to go to a Google form and complete a few questions. You will have the last question. You're going to write a summary, retell the story. So just like we did it, it needs to be several sentences long. It doesn't need just to be, there once lived a coyote and he blank. You've got to give us important, the problem, the solution.
the lesson, all those things have to be in there. It might not be quite as long as ours because your story's pretty short,
Right.
but
But you could include, and I think I put in the question to include about the character, the problem, the important events, solution, and then go on and state the lesson.
and when you're summarizing, boys and girls, you don't have to say the characters are. We never said in our retell the
No.
characters are. We just talked about them, Porcupine and Jackal. You won't need to say the characters are, the setting is. It's almost like you're starting at that 5-finger retell there at the problem, important events, solution, lesson, that half.
All right.
Get to
Well,
work.
Get to work, and we'll talk to you later.